Hi friends, welcome to QApedia and this is our blog qapedia.com. Today the topic that we are going to discuss is software testing life cycle, and the subtopics that we will discuss will be how to do software testing, software development life cycle, software testing life cycle, what is stlc, and then stages of stlc. And these are the various stages of stlc that we will discuss. Then the summary of the session, and at the end question. So let's see software testing lifecycle, or how to do software testing. So in last session we had discussed how to do software testing, and we had learned software development lifecycle in the process of learning how to do software testing. This is a continuation of that session. So we had seen some stages in software development lifecycle in our last session. So let's take a look at the stages of software development lifecycle. So in the previous session, we had discussed about SDLC, Software Development Lifecycle. The points that we discussed in last sessions were what is software development lifecycle and what are the different phases or stages in SDLC. The different phases or stages in SDLC are requirements gathering, requirement analysis, design, coding, testing, deployment, and maintenance. So we can see the testing is a phase here. So we can see that there is a stage in SDLC, that is testing phase. So this testing also involves some activities which are done in a series or in a phase or in stage manner. So in this testing phase also we have some activities which are done in a series or in a phase or in a stage manner, and all these series of activities are called software testing life cycle. So we are going to see those stages in this session. So let's see what is software life testing life cycle. Software testing life cycle is also called STLC in short form. So software testing life cycle, STLC. What is STLC? Software testing life cycle is a series of activities that are carried out during software testing. STLC follows a structured and a well-defined process so that it can ensure that the software that we are testing, it meets the quality standards. The expected quality standards are met. So STLC involves both verification and validation activity. So verification and validation we will discuss in detail in our coming session. But for now, you can say you can understand that STLC will have both verification and validation activities. So let's see the stages involved in STLC. The stages of STLC are requirement analysis, test planning, test case writing, test case review, test environment setup, test case execution, defect reporting and tracking, and test closure. So let's discuss each of the stage in detail. The first one is requirement analysis. So as we know that the functionality of a software is called requirement as well. We can call the functionality as requirement also. And all these requirements have to be analyzed before testing. So we have to analyze all the functionalities and requirements before we start our testing. And this analysis is done with the help of requirement documents. And we will have two types of requirement documents. One is functional requirement document and business requirement document. So these two requirement documents will help us in analyzing the requirement. So for example, if there is a software calculator and this calculator is having some functionalities like addition, subtraction, multiplication and division. So these have to be analyzed if we have to do software testing for calculator. Okay, so we have to analyze all these requirements or all these functionalities before doing testing. Then second phase is test planning. So once requirement analysis is done, that phase is over, then we have to create a test plan, and this we have to create test plan document, and this is done in test planning phase. So test plan document consists of a plan on how to carry out the testing, when should we start testing, when should we end testing. These kind of things are there in the test plan documents. And test plan document also includes the testing strategy, test objectives, test scope, test approach, and test schedule. So what is testing strategy? Testing strategy is the same thing, that how are we going to carry out the testing. Test objectives means why are we doing this testing, why do we need these requirements, why these functionalities are required. Then test scope means which functionality is in scope, which functionality is out of scope, like what functionalities are we going to cover, what functionalities are we not going to cover. Then test approach is also the same thing, that how do we carry out the testing. And then test schedule is nothing but when should we start testing and when should we end testing. So if suppose we see some example, that right now it's possible only to test the addition, subtraction, and multiplication functionality. Only three functionalities can be tested, because the development team can only develop these three functionalities. But division cannot be tested because they cannot develop. So division will be out of scope, and addition, subtraction, multiplication will be in scope. It so we will test that, we will be able to test these three functionalities, but we will not be able to test division because it's not available, it won't be available. So that will be out of scope, and other three functionalities will be in scope. So that is called test scope, and that will be a part of test plan. Then test case writing. So test case writing is a process of writing test cases, and test cases are like a detailed description of each functionalities or requirement, and these test cases are based on requirement and test plan document. In this process, we make sure that the test cases meet the requirement and we don't leave any requirement. We have to write test cases for each and every requirement which is necessary. And we have already seen the example of test cases in our first session, where we had discussed about what is software testing. So that example can be referred here. So we can see that example here. So you can see that this is a blog, what is software testing, and this in this blog we can see that we have some test cases. Like if suppose we want to see addition functionality, for addition functionality we have written three test cases: add two numbers, add three numbers, add a positive and a negative number. The same way for subtraction also we have written some test cases. So like this, for each and every functionality we write some number of test cases. So then comes test case review. So this is a process which is done after test cases are written, test cases are completed, and test cases are reviewed by business team. Business team is the one who is responsible for requirement gathering and for the creation of requirement documents. So business team collects the requirements, so they have more knowledge on requirements, so they can only review our test cases. They will have more knowledge to review our test cases, and they can guide us whether we have written our test cases correctly or not, and they can guide us in correcting those test cases as well. Then comes test environment setup. So test environment setup is a process where test environment is set up or created. So because this test environment is created so that we can perform execution of test cases. First of all, we must know what is test environment. So let's understand with an example. Let's say if we want to create an online order, and we want to create online order on Flipkart or on Amazon. So there should be some website available. If the website is not available, how can we create order? We cannot create order. So this website is called an environment. Okay. And if this kind of environment is set up for software testing purpose, okay, so any environment set up for software testing purpose, and that is called test environment, and this process of setting up is called test environment setup process. So if suppose we want to test an online order creation functionality, then there has to be a website which has to be created, and the order creation functionality should be available there so that we can test it. Then test execution. So once the test environment is set up, we are ready for test case execution. And then test case execution. Test case execution is a process where we do real testing. So if suppose we have written a test case for creating order, then we actually create an order in test environment. And uh, once we create, and then we see that if we are able to create order or not. So this way we mark a test case pass or fail and then continue our execution. So we have already seen the example of this in our first session where we had discussed about what is software testing. So that example can be referred here. Let's see that example. So this is the test execution process that we have discussed here. And here we can see that suppose we have a test case add to number, and then we are using some test data to test it. Then we have some expected result and then we have some actual result. And if both are matching, both are same, then our test case is pass. And if both are not same, like for this particular test case, add a positive and a negative number, then our expected result is 2 and actually is coming as 6. So test case is marked failed. So if suppose this kind of thing happens, then we mark our test case fail or we mark our test case pass. That can be that kind of thing is done in test case execution. Then defect reporting and tracking. So when we do test execution, so what we have to see that if the test case is getting passed or failed, and if a test case is getting failed, then we have to log a defect and assign it to a development team so that they can work on it and fix it. All the defects that we log, we need to track it. We need to track those defects in defect management tool like Jira or in Excel so that we can have a defect summary report wherein we can find the details of the defect like status of defect, priority of defect and all other details. So defect reporting is a different thing and tracking is a different thing. Defect reporting, whenever a test case is getting failed, we have to report a defect, we have to log a defect, and then if we have to track all the defects, then what we need to do, we have to all the defects that we have logged, we need to track it through defect management tool like Jira, or we have to do it in some Excel sheet. And why do we track it? We track it so that we will have a defect summary report, and this defect summary report will help us in finding the details of the defect like status of defect, priority of defect, how many number of defects we have logged, all those things. Then test closure. So once we finish test case execution, then we have to prepare a report that summarizes the testing process result. The test results or testing process result has to be summarized in some report, and that report will be a summary of testing done, and this is called test closure report, and this entire process is called test closure process. So in this report, we will have matrix on the testing process like number of test cases that we have executed, number of defects that we have found, what was the severity of the defect, and all other details that are required will be a part of this particular report, test closure report. Then let's summarize the topic for today. So we have discussed below topics today: how to do software testing life cycle, and then stages of software testing life cycle. These three things we have discussed in today's session. So this thing, how to do software testing, there is one more blog that we have to read, today's blog, how to do software testing, and then we have to read software testing life cycle for that. So software testing life cycle helps us in doing testing in more effective way. So the question for the session is that what are the stages that are involved in STLC in software testing life cycle. So we have to you have to tell me the stages involved in STLC, and then you can provide the answer to this in the comment section. And if you want to get the notes for this session, you can go to this particular blog. That's it for the session. Thank you very much.